In the next few minutes, you're going to discover practical ways to take control of your day and get things done, even when you don't feel like it. You'll learn how to stop waiting for motivation, remove distractions, and create habits that push you forward every single day. This video will give you simple, actionable steps to build consistency, stay focused, and make real progress toward your goals. By the end, you'll understand how to force yourself into action, track your progress, and develop routines that eliminate hesitation. You'll see how small, intentional decisions compound into big results over time. If you're ready to finally stop procrastinating and start achieving more in every area of your life, hit subscribe and join the Audiobook Tone community for more motivational and practical strategies. Stick around, you'll walk away with tools you can start using immediately to improve your life. Number 1. Remove distractions and start immediately. Removing distractions is not just about creating a quiet room or turning off a few notifications. It is a discipline that rewires the mind. Action becomes easier when the noise around you shrinks and your attention stops leaking into 100 small places. Every day, the mind fights a silent battle between what matters and what is immediately tempting. Most people lose that battle not because they lack intelligence or ambition, but because their environment constantly pulls their focus apart. When distractions control your attention, action becomes a struggle. When you control your attention, action becomes natural. The moment you clear the noise, you create room for effort to rise. Distraction is the enemy that steals minutes without asking permission. It disguises itself as harmless entertainment, as quick breaks, as messages that feel urgent but truly are not. The human brain is not designed to jump between tasks every few seconds. Each switch weakens momentum, progress slows, frustration grows, then a belief starts forming that action is hard, when in reality the environment is simply designed to trap attention. The solution is not complicated. Remove the traps. Take away anything that breaks focus. Choose what deserves to stay. Action becomes easier the moment your surroundings stop fighting against your goals. The starting point is awareness. Most people underestimate how much time they lose because they are not paying attention to their own attention. They think they are working, but their phone lights up. They think they are planning, but a random thought pulls them into scrolling. They think they are preparing, but the fear of effort makes them check something unimportant. When this cycle repeats long enough, it becomes a habit, and habits, even harmful ones, feel comfortable. To reverse it, acknowledge how distraction operates. It works quietly. It thrives on small interruptions. It grows when you do nothing to stop it. But the moment you expose it, the moment you decide to remove it, its power weakens. A distraction-free environment is not built by accident. It is created by intention. Begin by looking around your physical space. Everything in sight should serve a purpose. If an object triggers avoidance, remove it from your immediate area. If your phone tempts you, put it in another room. If your workspace feels cluttered, clear it until it feels light. A clean space does not guarantee action, but it removes friction. It signals the mind that this place is meant for effort, not escape. When the environment becomes simple, the mind feels less scattered. When the mind feels less scattered, action flows easier. Digital distractions hold even more weight because they speak directly to impulses. Social media, notifications, and endless content are designed to keep you trapped. They promise comfort, but they steal your time. You do not need to cut them out forever. You only need to control when they have access to your attention. Turn off non-essential notifications. Silence your device during work periods. Place apps inside folders so they take effort to open. The goal is not to create a life of restriction. The goal is to remove automatic behaviors that sabotage your progress. The less automatic your distractions become, the more deliberate your actions can be. Immediate action is the second half of this chapter, and it is just as important as removing distractions. Many people wait for motivation, clarity, or the perfect moment, but action does not rely on feelings. Real progress begins when you act before your mind negotiates with you. The longer you wait, the stronger the resistance becomes. The mind tries to protect you from effort by offering excuses, promising you can start later, convincing you that preparation is enough. The truth is that starting is the hardest part, and it becomes easier when you begin without hesitation. Starting immediately does not mean rushing. It means removing delay. It means doing the first step before your mind creates reasons to avoid it. Even a small action can break inertia. Once you begin, momentum carries you forward. The mind shifts from resistance to participation. You no longer argue with yourself. You simply move. Discipline grows through repetition, and repetition begins with the decision to act now, not later. A powerful technique is the one-step rule. Instead of thinking about the full task, focus only on the first step. Open the document, pick up the book, stand up, prepare the tool. The mind is far more willing to accept a small action, and that small action often leads directly into the larger task. This removes overwhelm and replaces it with movement. Movement builds confidence. Confidence encourages consistency, and consistency produces results that transform your life. Another important idea is reducing friction. Make it as easy as possible to begin. Set up your tools the night before. Keep your workspace ready. Prepare your clothes, your equipment, or your notes ahead of time. When everything is in place, starting requires less effort. Most people fail not because the task is difficult, but because getting started requires too many steps. Simplify the beginning, and you remove half the battle. Taking action immediately also trains resilience. When you choose to begin even when you do not feel ready, you strengthen your character. You develop the ability to do what must be done regardless of mood. This is the heart of discipline. Emotion becomes secondary. Commitment becomes primary. Life becomes easier when you no longer depend on motivation to move forward. You become someone who acts because it is necessary, not because you feel inspired. This level of self-mastery creates freedom. It allows you to trust yourself. It builds a mindset that can withstand difficulty. Practical application matters. Start with your phone. Place it out of reach. Then choose one task. Do not think about the whole day. Do not plan endlessly. Begin. Use the first minute to start, not to debate. If a distraction appears in your mind, acknowledge it without reacting to it. Your thoughts do not control you unless you follow them. Stay with the task in front of you. The more time you spend focused, the stronger your attention becomes. Attention is like a muscle. It grows through practice and weakens through neglect. When you choose focus every day, even for short stretches, you reshape your ability to act. As you continue this process, something important happens. Action begins to feel normal. Distraction feels less satisfying. Your mind starts valuing the feeling of progress more than the temporary pleasure of avoidance. This change does not happen overnight, but it happens consistently when you remove distractions and start immediately. You build a life where effort is no longer a burden. It becomes a part of your identity. You become someone who moves, someone who decides, someone who finishes. The truth is simple. Your life improves the moment you stop letting distractions control your direction. You create your future through the actions you take each day, not the intentions you hold. Removing distractions clears the path. Starting immediately creates momentum. Both together form the foundation of daily discipline. And through discipline, transformation becomes inevitable. Number 2, set deadlines that create urgency. Deadlines are more than dates on a calendar. They are psychological triggers that push the mind to shift from intention to action. Without them, time feels unlimited. And when time feels unlimited, effort becomes optional. The human mind naturally delays anything that seems uncomfortable, challenging, or unclear. But when a clear deadline is set, the mind reorganizes itself. Energy rises, focus sharpens. Tasks that once felt heavy suddenly feel urgent. This sense of urgency is not pressure in a harmful way. It is direction. It gives shape to your day, and it forces you to decide what matters right now instead of some. Most people avoid deadlines because they fear the responsibility that comes with them. A deadline exposes whether a task was completed or ignored. It removes the cushion of excuses. It makes progress measurable. This can feel intimidating, but it is exactly what strengthens discipline. A life without deadlines becomes a life of postponed goals. Ideas remain ideas, dreams stay in the imagination, and growth slows down. A deadline, even a small one, changes all of that. It brings a clear finish point. It gives the mind something to move toward. It makes you accountable to yourself. Urgency is not the same as rushing. Urgency simply means the task is important enough to address now rather than later. It prevents unnecessary delays and breaks the habit of waiting for the perfect mood or perfect moment. When you set a deadline with intention, you give every action a purpose. You replace uncertainty with structure. You create a rhythm of movement that keeps your life advancing one step at a time. The mind becomes more decisive because it understands that time is not infinite. This shift in mindset is what creates lasting progress. A key part of creating effective deadlines is making them realistic, yet firm. A deadline that is too flexible loses its power. A deadline that is too extreme leads to burnout. The balance lies in choosing a time frame that challenges you without overwhelming you. The goal is to push yourself enough to stay alert and engaged. When you choose a deadline, commit to it fully. Treat it as a promise to yourself, not a suggestion. This level of commitment builds internal respect. When you follow through consistently, your confidence grows because you know you can rely on your own word. A practical method is to give every task a specific endpoint. Instead of saying you will finish a chapter today, say you will complete it by 3 p.m. Instead of saying you will clean your workspace this evening, choose a precise hour. When the time is concrete, the mind uses it as a target. The task becomes grounded instead of floating loosely in your schedule. This small shift creates significant improvement in productivity. Your brain responds differently to a clear deadline than to a vague intention. A clear deadline says, "This will be done." A vague intention says, "This might happen." Using short deadlines can also be effective. Long deadlines often create a false sense of comfort. The mind thinks there is plenty of time, so it delays action until the last moments. This happens with school assignments, work projects, personal goals, and even life decisions. But when you shorten the timeline, the mind adapts. It becomes more focused. It stops wasting energy on unnecessary thoughts and starts working directly on the task. Short deadlines compress time in a way that increases efficiency. You accomplish more in less time because the brain knows it does not have room to drift. Urgency also increases emotional investment. When you know something must be done soon, you pay more attention to it. You care more about the result. You push yourself a little harder. This emotional involvement fuels persistence. It keeps you engaged even when the task becomes difficult. Without urgency, tasks feel optional. And when things feel optional, the natural tendency is to choose comfort instead of effort. That's why deadlines are essential. They protect your goals from being pushed aside. Another powerful technique is announcing your deadlines to someone else. You do not need to share every goal with others, but sharing certain deadlines adds an extra layer of accountability. You become more committed because someone else is aware of the timeline. The mind becomes less likely to abandon the task because there is a social connection tied to it. This does not mean living based on others' expectations. It simply means using accountability as a tool to strengthen your discipline. Tracking deadlines is equally important. Write them down. Put them where you can see them. When you visually see a timeline approaching, your mind stays aware of it. You avoid drifting. You become more protected from distractions because you know exactly what needs to be done and when. A written deadline has weight. It feels real. It turns your goals into commitments rather than wishes. This practice also gives you a sense of order. Your day becomes structured. You know what to expect. You know what needs your attention first. When a deadline approaches, avoid overthinking. Overthinking steals time. It creates doubt and slows down movement. Focus on the action itself rather than the feelings surrounding it. When you work steadily, the anxiety around deadlines disappears. You no longer worry about running out of time because you are consistently moving. Progress dissolves pressure. The earlier you begin, the lighter the deadline feels. The later you start, the heavier it becomes. This is why urgency matters. It encourages early action instead of last-minute panic. Creating urgency also teaches you to value your time. When time has structure, you become aware of how much of it is wasted. You stop tolerating unnecessary delays. You stop giving attention to things that do not contribute to your growth. You begin to protect your hours more fiercely because you see each one as a chance to move forward. This awareness deepens your self-respect. You stop treating your goals casually. You take your life seriously, not in a heavy way, but in a responsible way. You understand that your time is not replaceable. As you use deadlines consistently, your ability to take action grows stronger. The brain becomes familiar with working under clear timelines. This familiarity builds efficiency. You waste less time preparing to work and spend more time actually working. You become faster at making decisions. You become better at estimating how long tasks will take. You become more skilled at managing your own effort. These are qualities that shape success across every area of life. Urgency also removes the emotional weight of tasks. When a deadline is in place, the task becomes something you simply must do. There is no room for internal negotiation. You do not spend hours convincing yourself to start. You move because the deadline demands it. This removes hesitation and reduces stress. It creates a straightforward relationship between you and your responsibilities. You do the work because it is time. This simplicity frees mental energy for more meaningful thinking. Over time, deadlines help shape a disciplined identity. You begin to see yourself as someone who finishes what they start, someone who honors their commitments, someone who uses time wisely. This identity influences your behavior. Without effort, you act in alignment with the person you believe you are. When you see yourself as disciplined, you behave accordingly. Deadlines anchor that identity by giving you consistent proof of your discipline. Setting deadlines is not about pressure. It is about direction, clarity, and progress. It gives your actions urgency, your days structure, and your goals momentum. When time has boundaries, effort has meaning. When effort has meaning, growth becomes natural. Through clear deadlines, you take control of your time, your habits, and ultimately your life. Number 3, break tasks into tiny steps. Many goals feel heavy, not because they are impossible, but because the mind tries to face them all at once. A large task triggers resistance. It looks intimidating, unclear, and demanding. The mind prefers comfort, so when it sees something that appears too big, it creates hesitation. That hesitation quietly delays progress. This is why breaking tasks into tiny steps becomes a powerful way to create steady action. When a task is divided into smaller movements, the mind no longer feels overwhelmed. The challenge becomes manageable. The path becomes visible. Instead of wrestling with the entire weight of the task, you only deal with one small piece at a time. Big goals can distort perception. They make effort look larger than it truly is. The brain exaggerates difficulty because it cannot immediately understand the full process. A task like writing a book, organizing your space, starting a business, or improving your health looks like a mountain when you think about it as a whole. But when you divide it into tiny, clear steps, the mountain turns into a sequence of simple actions, one step after another. Effort becomes lighter because the mind sees progress instead of pressure. Each small step matters more than most people realize. A tiny action completed consistently carries far more power than large actions attempted occasionally. Consistency builds momentum. Momentum builds confidence. Confidence builds long-term discipline. Breaking tasks down allows you to create this chain of movement. The first step is often something so small that it almost feels insignificant. But that is the point. A step that feels easy removes resistance. It gives you a quick win. It tells the brain, this is doable. That shift is enough to keep you moving. When you reduce a task into tiny steps, you also gain clarity. Vague goals drain motivation because you do not know where to begin. You may know the destination, but the path is blurry. Clear, small steps turn a blurry path into a straight line. This clarity removes mental friction. You no longer waste energy thinking about how to start. You simply follow the next step in front of you. This simplicity strengthens discipline because discipline thrives when decisions are easy. Every time you remove confusion, you increase your ability to act. The mind handles small steps better because it processes them with less emotional weight. A big task triggers doubt and fear. A tiny step does not. A tiny step feels doable even when your energy is low. It feels manageable even when your mood is not perfect. This makes it possible to take action on days when motivation is absent. Success grows fastest when you build the habit of taking small steps regardless of how you feel. Those small steps accumulate into real results over time. To break tasks into tiny steps effectively, start by identifying the main goal. Then imagine the smallest action you can take toward it. Make it something you can complete in minutes, not hours. If the step still feels heavy, divide it again. Keep dividing until the step feels simple enough that you could do it even when tired or stressed. This technique removes excuses. The easier the step, the less room the mind has to avoid it. When the barrier to action is low, procrastination loses its power. Daily progress becomes more sustainable when the steps are small. Many people burn out because they expect themselves to complete large chunks of work at once. They push hard, then lose energy, then stop completely. Tiny steps prevent this cycle. They allow you to build progress in a gentle but persistent way. They also help you maintain balance. You do not feel drained because the workload is divided. You stay consistent because the effort feels realistic. This approach builds endurance rather than exhaustion. Breaking tasks into small pieces also improves focus. It gives the mind a single point of direction instead of a wide, scattered range of responsibilities. Focus thrives on simplicity. When you know exactly what to do next, your attention narrows. You stop wasting time switching between tasks or worrying about future steps. You stay grounded in the present action. This creates deeper concentration and higher quality work. Over time, your ability to focus strengthens because you train your mind to stay with one tiny step until it is done. Each completed step provides a sense of completion. This feeling of finishing something is a powerful motivator. It creates a psychological reward that encourages you to continue. Even small achievements release a sense of progress. This builds a positive cycle. You complete a step, you feel accomplished, and that feeling pushes you to take another step. Large tasks rarely give this sense of accomplishment until the very end. Tiny steps give it to you consistently, making the journey more engaging. Another advantage of tiny steps is flexibility. Life is unpredictable. There will be days when you cannot complete big tasks due to time, energy, or unexpected responsibilities. But small steps fit anywhere. You can complete one during a short break, early in the morning, or before going to sleep. This flexibility prevents long pauses in progress. You stay connected to your goals even on difficult days. This connection is crucial because the longer you pause, the harder it becomes to restart. Tiny steps keep the momentum alive. This approach also helps reduce perfectionism. Perfectionism often appears when tasks feel too large or too important. The mind fears not doing it perfectly, so it delays doing it at all. But when the step is small, the pressure to make it perfect disappears. You allow yourself to simply complete it. This creates a healthier relationship with your goals. You move forward with less anxiety. You focus more on progress than on flawless execution. Over time, this reduces perfectionist tendencies and makes you more productive. When breaking tasks into small steps, avoid thinking too far ahead. Trust the process. Complete one step, then move to the next. Large goals become overwhelming when you try to mentally handle too many future steps at once. Focus on today's movement. Tomorrow's steps will be handled tomorrow. This keeps your mind calm and your energy steady. It also helps you stay grounded in the present moment, which increases productivity and reduces stress. The real power of tiny steps becomes clear when you look back. After a week, you see noticeable progress. After a month, the results are meaningful. After a year, the transformation is undeniable. This long-term impact is only possible because tiny steps make consistency achievable. They turn overwhelming goals into daily actions that eventually reshape your life. Many people underestimate how much small actions accumulate. They look for dramatic changes, forgetting that every major achievement is built from countless small moments of effort. Breaking tasks into tiny steps builds discipline because it forces the mind to act regularly. Discipline grows through repetition, not intensity. When you take small steps every day, you train yourself to move even when you do not feel powerful. You build a steady rhythm. This rhythm becomes a habit. And once it becomes a habit, action no longer feels like a struggle. It becomes a natural part of who you are. You become someone who moves forward steadily, regardless of circumstance. Tiny steps also give you control. They allow you to own your progress. Instead of feeling powerless against large tasks, you gain confidence because you know exactly what to do next. You see progress happening in real time. You feel capable because you are constantly moving forward. This sense of control creates emotional stability. It reduces frustration and increases resilience. When challenges arise, you handle them with more patience because you trust your ability to work through them slowly and consistently. In the end, breaking tasks into tiny steps is a form of self-respect. It is choosing a method that supports your long-term success rather than overwhelming you. It is treating your goals with seriousness by giving them the structure they deserve. It is giving your mind the clarity it needs to take action daily. Through tiny steps, you build a life that grows steadily, calmly, and consistently. This approach transforms difficulty into something manageable and progress into something inevitable. Number 4, use rewards to drive consistency. Consistency grows strongest when the mind connects effort with something positive. Many people try to stay disciplined through force alone, but willpower fades when it has no support. Rewards give the mind a reason to return to the same action again and again. They create a small sense of satisfaction that reinforces the habit you are building. When your brain knows something enjoyable follows your effort, resistance decreases. The task feels less like a burden and more like a meaningful choice. This is not about bribing yourself. It is about teaching your mind that progress is worth celebrating, even in small ways. Rewards work because human motivation responds to reinforcement. The brain is wired to seek emotional return. When an action consistently leads to something pleasant, the mind becomes more willing to repeat it. Discipline then grows from a place of encouragement rather than tension. This makes daily action easier to sustain. Instead of struggling through tasks with a sense of obligation, you move forward with a feeling of anticipation. This shift does not weaken discipline, it strengthens it. A tired mind needs support. A supported mind can carry responsibility for a long time without breaking. The key is choosing rewards that encourage consistency rather than distract from it. A healthy reward fits the task and supports your long-term goals. It can be simple, like enjoying a quiet moment after finishing your work, eating a snack you enjoy, listening to a favorite song, or taking a short walk. The reward does not need to be dramatic. It only needs to be something that makes the completion of your task feel meaningful. Small rewards work best because they do not create dependence. They simply add a touch of satisfaction that keeps the habit alive. Timing matters. A reward is most effective when it comes directly after the action. This immediate connection teaches the mind to associate effort with a positive outcome. If the reward comes too late, the link becomes weaker and the motivational impact decreases. When you finish a task and immediately enjoy something you planned for yourself, you reinforce the behavior. Your mind recognizes a pattern. Complete the task. Gain the reward. This creates a psychological loop that strengthens your consistency over time. Using rewards also builds a healthier relationship with work. Many people see work as something that must be endured. They treat effort as punishment and relief as the only good part of their day. This mindset eventually leads to burnout. When you incorporate rewards intentionally, you shift your relationship with work. Effort becomes part of a balanced routine. You move through the day with more patience because you know each period of focus is followed by something enjoyable. This reduces mental strain and increases long-term sustainability. Another benefit of using rewards is that they help you manage difficult tasks. When facing something challenging, promising yourself a reward can reduce anxiety. It gives you something to look forward to. Instead of focusing on the discomfort of the task, your mind focuses on the reward waiting on the other side. This simple shift of attention can make demanding work feel easier to start and finish. It becomes less of a battle and more of a structured process. Complete the step, earn the reward, continue building progress. Rewards also help you track consistency. When you set up a system where each completed day or task earns a reward, you create a visible record of your commitment. You can see your streak growing. You can feel your discipline strengthening. This sense of visible progress becomes a reward of its own. Over time, the habit of staying consistent becomes deeply satisfying. You become proud of showing up, not just of finishing tasks. This pride fuels more consistency, creating a self-sustaining cycle of improvement. Some people resist the idea of rewards because they believe discipline should come purely from inner strength. But inner strength is not something you are born with. It is something built through repeated behavior. Rewards help build that behavior. They guide the mind towards structure. They make early steps easier so you can reach a point where action becomes natural. Once discipline is strong, you may rely less on rewards, but during the building process, they are essential tools. There is value in choosing rewards that align with your identity. If you want to become healthier, choose rewards that support your well-being. If you want to grow intellectually, reward yourself with something that stimulates your mind. If you want to improve your emotional resilience, choose rewards that bring peace rather than escape. Aligning rewards with your values strengthens the foundation of your growth. It keeps you consistent without causing conflict between your short-term pleasure and your long-term goals. Another effective method is using milestone rewards. Certain tasks require sustained effort over days or weeks. For these types of goals, create small rewards for daily progress and larger rewards for major achievements. This creates a multi-layered system that supports both short-term motivation and long-term commitment. Each milestone becomes something to anticipate. It helps prevent boredom and keeps you emotionally invested in the process. The journey becomes more meaningful because each stage has its own sense of completion. Rewards also teach you to appreciate your own discipline. Many people only feel satisfaction when they reach the final goal. They overlook the small victories that make the goal possible. When you reward yourself consistently, you learn to recognize effort on a daily basis. You acknowledge the work you put in. This builds self-respect. You start treating your time and energy with more seriousness. You understand that consistency is not something small. It is the foundation of growth. By rewarding it, you reinforce your own value. When implementing a reward system, avoid choosing rewards that undo your progress. A reward should support your journey, not sabotage it. For example, if you are building healthier habits, do not choose a reward that weakens your health. If you are strengthening financial discipline, avoid rewards that lead to impulsive spending. Choose rewards that elevate your growth rather than conflict with it. This creates alignment between your short-term enjoyment and your long-term development. The more personal the reward feels, the more powerful it becomes. A reward does not need to impress others. It only needs to resonate with you. Something simple might motivate you more than something extravagant. The purpose is emotional reinforcement, not status. Take time to understand what genuinely brings you comfort or joy. Use those insights to design rewards that fit your personality, lifestyle, and goals. This makes the habit-building process feel natural instead of forced. As you apply this system, you will notice your consistency improving. Tasks that once felt draining become easier to approach. You begin to trust yourself more because you see that you follow through. Your discipline strengthens because it is supported, not strained. Over time, the rewards may become less important because the sense of progress becomes its own reward. When you see your habits shaping your life, the growth itself becomes motivating. Using rewards to drive consistency is a form of self-guidance. It is a gentle, effective way to teach your mind that effort deserves recognition. It builds patterns that support your goals. It makes discipline sustainable. When you combine effort with positive reinforcement, you create a system that supports you mentally, emotionally, and practically. Through this approach, consistency becomes something you choose willingly, not something you force through stress. It becomes a natural part of your daily rhythm, guiding you steadily toward long-term success. Number 5, track progress daily without excuses. Tracking your progress every single day is one of the few habits that quietly changes everything because it forces you to face the truth about what you're doing and what you're avoiding. When you track your actions, you remove the guesswork. You stop assuming you're doing enough, and you start dealing with real numbers, real behaviors, and real results. This daily tracking turns into a mirror that reflects your commitment, your follow-through, and your effort without filters or excuses. And that clarity becomes the pressure you need to stay consistent, even on the days when you don't feel like doing anything. When you create a simple system that captures your actions, you hold yourself to a higher standard, because you know you'll see the results of your choices at the end of the day. The key is to keep your tracking method simple. A complicated system usually falls apart, because the moment it becomes a task by itself, you avoid it. A plain notebook, a digital checklist, or a basic habit app is enough. What matters is that the system clearly shows whether you followed through or not. You should be able to look at it for 5 seconds and instantly know if you did what you said you would do. That level of honesty helps you remove the stories you tell yourself. Many people overestimate how much they work because they rely on memory. But memory is emotional and unreliable. Tracking is factual. Once everything is written down, you can no longer hide behind feelings. You see what actually happened. Daily tracking also introduces accountability. Even if no one else sees your records, you hold yourself responsible. There's something powerful about checking a box or marking a completion because it gives you a sense of closure. That small action reinforces that you showed up. When you skip it, it creates an uncomfortable gap that you want to avoid the next day. Over time, your brain starts to associate consistency with relief and inconsistency with discomfort. This shift builds discipline naturally because you want the satisfaction of finishing what you start. You don't need motivation when you have proof that you're capable of staying on track. Another advantage of tracking your progress daily is that you can notice patterns you normally overlook. You'll start to see which days you perform well, which situations lead to delays, and which habits disappear when pressure rises. Maybe you realize you're productive in the morning, but drag gags into the evening. Maybe you see that certain distractions hit you hardest after lunch. Maybe you notice that you skip tasks when they aren't broken down clearly enough. These insights help you make adjustments that actually work, instead of relying on vague assumptions. You become more strategic because you have evidence to guide you. Tracking also builds momentum. When you see a streak forming, you feel more committed to protecting it. Missing a day becomes harder because you don't want to break the chain. This visual momentum encourages you to take action, even on low-energy days. It's easy to procrastinate when you think your actions don't matter, but when you look at a growing streak, you understand that one day does matter. One skipped action can easily turn into a week of lost discipline. One completed task can turn into a full day of productive decisions. The streak makes every action meaningful. Another powerful aspect of daily tracking is that it gives you control over your progress. Instead of waiting for results to show up, you focus on the behaviors that produce them. Results often take time, but actions happen today. When you track your actions rather than your outcomes, you keep your attention on what you can control. This removes frustration because you're not obsessing over results you can't speed up. You're focused on what you can do right now. And when you control the present, you shape the future. Over time, tracking also increases your self-awareness. You begin to understand yourself better, your habits, your tendencies, your weak points, your strengths. This awareness is not judgmental, it's informative. When you know what slows you down, you can prepare for it. When you know what energizes you, you can use it intentionally. Most people live on autopilot, acting out of habit without noticing why they do what they do. Tracking breaks that cycle and puts you back in the driver's seat. Daily tracking creates a quiet pressure that makes excuses harder to justify. When you see an empty checkbox at the end of the day, you feel the weight of it. That discomfort is good. It reminds you that you are responsible for your choices. When you track consistently, you no longer hide behind phrases like, "I'll start tomorrow," or "I tried." The evidence is right there. You either did it or you didn't. This honesty strengthens your discipline because it forces you to raise your standard. You're not comparing yourself to others. You're comparing yourself to who you were yesterday. Tracking also helps you avoid drifting. Without a record of your actions, it's easy to lose focus and start acting randomly. You might feel busy, but you're not moving forward. Daily tracking prevents that aimless motion by grounding you in your priorities. When you check your list each day, You remind yourself of what matters. You stop getting pulled into unimportant tasks because you have a clear picture of what deserves your attention. It becomes easier to filter out distractions because you know exactly what needs to be done. Another benefit is that daily tracking turns small wins into visible progress. Many people underestimate the power of tiny actions because they don't see immediate rewards. But when you track them, you start to notice that small steps stack up quickly. What once felt insignificant becomes part of a growing body of work. This encourages you to keep going because you can actually see progress forming. It's no longer hidden. It's documented. Tracking also motivates you to upgrade your habits over time. As you become more consistent, you start wanting to improve your efficiency. You begin asking yourself better questions. How can I finish this faster? How can I make this step smoother? How can I prepare better? This natural desire to optimize comes from seeing your daily actions clearly. You can't refine what you don't measure. When you track, you get the insight needed to make smarter choices. Eventually, daily tracking becomes part of your identity. You start seeing yourself as someone who follows through, someone who pays attention, someone who takes responsibility for their growth. This identity shift matters because we always act in alignment with who we believe we are. When you internalize the idea that you are consistent, you show up consistently. When you see yourself as disciplined, you behave with discipline. Tracking is the evidence that supports that identity. And the most important part is that you don't need perfection. Tracking isn't about judging yourself harshly. It's about awareness and improvement. You'll have days where you slip, but as long as you keep recording your actions, you stay connected to your goals. You maintain the habit of reflection. You keep the doorway open for progress. That's what keeps you from falling back into old patterns. Tracking your progress daily without excuses is more than a habit. It's a tool that transforms your follow-through, your self-awareness, and your consistency. It keeps you honest, focused, and accountable. When you commit to this simple practice, you take control of your actions and create steady progress that you can actually see. Number 6, create routines that remove choice. When you create routines that remove choice, you make daily action easier because you stop negotiating with yourself every morning. The more decisions you leave open, the more room you give hesitation, doubt, and second-guessing to slow you down. A routine eliminates that noise by turning action into something automatic. Instead of waking up and deciding whether you feel ready, you follow a sequence that's already set. This takes the pressure off your willpower and puts the responsibility on structure. When the structure is clear, you don't waste time wondering what to do next. You move from one step to another without overthinking, and that consistency builds a sense of stability that keeps you moving forward even when your motivation dips. Most people underestimate how much energy they lose through simple decisions. Small questions like when to start, where to work, or how to begin can drain your focus before you even take the first step. A routine removes those tiny battles. You know exactly what your morning looks like, when your work begins, and how you'll close your day. That predictability doesn't make life boring. It creates a foundation that supports every action you want to take. When your days follow a steady rhythm, you don't waste time fighting yourself. You simply follow the plan because it's easier than trying to figure everything out again. Routines also help you avoid emotional decision-making. When you rely on how you feel in the moment, you end up taking action only when your energy is high or when your mood is supportive. But routines don't care if you're tired or unmotivated. They guide you regardless of emotion. This keeps you committed to your goals because you're not waiting for a good day to get things done. You follow the routine, and the routine carries you. Over time, this builds a strong sense of reliability in yourself. You know you can count on your habits because they don't shift based on your mood. To create routines that actually remove choice, you need to design them around predictable triggers. A trigger is something that signals your brain to begin a specific behavior. For example, waking up at a set time can trigger your morning actions. Sitting at your desk can trigger your first work task. Changing into workout clothes can trigger your exercise session. These triggers link your environment to your daily behaviors, making it easier to start without hesitating. When your mind associates specific cues with specific actions, You no longer debate what to do. You just begin. Another important part of building routines is simplifying the beginning of each task. The start is usually the hardest part. When you make the starting point easy, the rest flows naturally. This might mean keeping your workspace organized so you can begin immediately, preparing your clothes the night before so you don't scramble in the morning, or planning your priorities ahead of time to avoid confusion. When the start is simple, your mind doesn't look for excuse, it sees a clear path and follows it. The fewer barriers you have at the beginning, the more likely you are to follow through. Routines also give you mental clarity because they remove uncertainty. When you know what your day looks like, you don't have to question whether you're doing the right thing. You don't bounce between tasks. You stay focused because the sequence is already decided. This reduces stress and keeps your thinking sharp. Instead of dividing your attention between planning and doing, you spend your energy on execution, and executing consistently is what leads to progress. One overlooked advantage of creating routines is how they strengthen your discipline gradually. Every time you follow your routine, you reinforce the idea that you are someone who keeps commitments. This internal belief is powerful. It shapes your actions without forcing you to rely on motivation. When you see yourself as disciplined, it becomes easier to act in disciplined ways. Routines feed this identity because they provide daily proof of your follow-through. Even on difficult days, completing your routine gives you a sense of stability and self-trust. Another benefit is that routines anchor your day. No matter how unpredictable life becomes, your routine creates a stable center that keeps you grounded. It gives you something you can control when everything else feels uncertain. This stability reduces anxiety because you don't feel overwhelmed by constant change. You know which actions matter most, and you stay committed to them even when circumstances shift. This grounding effect keeps you productive during stressful times because you always have a structure to lean on. Routines also help you build momentum. When your actions follow a consistent order, your mind develops a flow that makes staying on track easier. You transition smoothly from one task to the next because your brain knows what comes next. This eliminates the mental pause where distractions usually sneak in. Without those gaps, you stay focused for longer periods, and your productivity increases without extra effort. The smooth flow of a routine creates a calm but powerful momentum that keeps you engaged. Another advantage of routines is that they reduce decision fatigue. When your mind doesn't have to constantly make choices, it frees up energy for important tasks. This makes you more effective throughout the day because you're not drained by unnecessary decisions. You protect your mental resources for the work that matters. This is why many high-performing individuals stick to strict routines. They understand that their mental energy is limited, and they choose to save it for meaningful actions rather than daily guessing. Over time, routines also reshape your environment. When you consistently follow the same pattern, your surroundings naturally adjust to support your habits. Your tools stay organized because you use them regularly. Your schedule becomes predictable because your actions follow a rhythm. Your space becomes cleaner because you maintain it as part of your routine. This environmental support makes it easier to stay productive because your surroundings stop working against you. Instead, they reinforce your daily behavior. Creating routines that remove choice also helps you manage distractions. When you know exactly what you're supposed to be doing at a particular time, distractions lose their appeal. You're less likely to get pulled into unplanned activities because your routine gives you a clear purpose. You recognize when something doesn't fit into your schedule, and you redirect your attention more easily. This reduces wasted time and keeps you aligned with your goals. A strong routine also improves your confidence. When you follow a reliable structure each day, you build a sense of control over your life. You stop feeling like your days are unpredictable or chaotic. Instead, you feel like you're steering your time with intention. This confidence strengthens your determination because you see the impact of your actions more clearly. You understand that consistency produces results, and this clarity motivates you to keep going. The most powerful part of creating routines that remove choice is that it allows you to act without overthinking. Once your routine becomes familiar, it stops feeling like effort. It becomes a natural part of your day. You don't fight with yourself to begin. You don't need to hype yourself up. You don't need to search for motivation. You simply follow the structure you built, and that structure keeps you moving forward. When you design your routines carefully, you create a daily path that leads you toward your goals without requiring constant mental battles. You stop relying on motivation and start relying on clarity, consistency, and structure. That is what allows you to take action every day without excuses or hesitation. Number 7. Limit options to reduce hesitation. Limiting options is one of the most effective ways to remove hesitation. Yet it's something most people resist because they believe more choices equal more freedom. In reality, too many choices slow you down, drain your mental energy, and create uncertainty that pushes you into delaying action. When you reduce the number of decisions you face, you create a clearer path forward. You no longer float between possibilities, wondering which one is best. You act because the path in front of you is simple and direct. This is not about restricting your life. It's about clearing mental clutter so you can use your strength where it matters most. Hesitation usually appears when you're trying to choose between multiple directions. You think about different ways to begin, compare various strategies, or debate whether to start now or later. This inner debate steals precious time and builds frustration. Your mind starts circling around possibilities instead of focusing on execution. By limiting options, you break this loop before it even forms. When you have only one or two clear choices, your mind stops drifting and your focus sharpens automatically. The fewer paths you consider, the easier it becomes to take the first step. Your brain is wired to preserve energy, and decision-making is one of the activities that drains that energy the fastest. Every time you pause to choose, a small portion of your mental strength disappears. If you face dozens of decisions before you've even begun your work, your energy weakens long before action starts. That is why limiting options is a form of discipline. It protects your mind from unnecessary fatigue and ensures that your energy goes into doing rather than deciding. The less you decide, the more you accomplish. When you narrow your choices, you create an environment that supports momentum. Think about how much smoother your day feels when the next step is obvious. Instead of scanning through possibilities, you move forward without friction. This momentum builds confidence because you start seeing progress instead of delays. Progress feeds your motivation, and motivation becomes easier to sustain when you're not constantly stopping to decide what comes next. Limiting options creates a flow that keeps your attention aligned with your goals instead of scattered across distractions. Another powerful benefit of limiting options is that it strengthens clarity. When you have too many choices, your vision becomes cloudy. You start doubting your decisions, wondering if you picked the right approach. This doubt erodes confidence and leads to second guessing. But when your options are limited, your mind becomes more focused on making the most of what you have, rather than searching endlessly for something better. You stop chasing perfect paths and start committing to the one that moves you forward. This shift reduces anxiety and replaces uncertainty with stability. People often assume that having many options is a sign of opportunity, but real opportunity comes from commitment, not endless possibilities. Possibilities only matter when you act on them. A limited set of choices encourages commitment because you stop looking for alternatives. You follow through on your decisions because there aren't 10 other paths pulling your attention away. This commitment helps you build depth in your work, rather than spreading yourself thin across too many directions. You gain traction faster because your energy is concentrated. To limit options in a practical and meaningful way, start with your daily environment. Your surroundings influence your decisions more than you realize. If your workspace is cluttered with different tools, gadgets, and distractions, your mind will want to clear your environments, so only the essentials remain. When your space is simple, your mind becomes simple. You don't think about unnecessary tasks because your environment doesn't remind you of them. A clean, minimalist setting supports sharper focus and quicker action. Next, limit your choices in planning. Instead of creating long, complicated to-do lists with dozens of tasks, highlight the one or two actions that matter most. Giving yourself fewer tasks doesn't make you less productive. It makes you more effective. When you try to complete too many tasks, you spread your efforts thin. But when your list is short and meaningful, You give each task the attention it deserves. This not only improves the quality of your work, but also removes the mental stress that comes from juggling too many responsibilities at once. Another area where limiting options is crucial is in your routines. Predictability helps your mind relax because it knows what to expect. When you decide the timing, structure, and steps of your day in advance, you remove the need to choose them later. This prevents hesitation from creeping in. If you begin your morning with a clear sequence, there's no debate about when to start or how to begin. Your routine becomes a silent guide that pushes you forward before your mind has the chance to wander. Limiting options also helps you manage distractions more effectively. Many distractions appear appealing simply because they offer alternative paths. When your options are limited, distractions lose their power. You're not tempted by every notification, app, or irrelevant idea because your mind is locked into a narrow corridor of choices. This helps you sustain focus for longer periods, which leads to deeper work and better results. With fewer alternatives calling for your attention, the important tasks stand out more clearly. A focused life requires boundaries. Boundaries aren't restrictions, they're safeguards. When you reduce what you say yes to, you protect your time and energy from being scattered across commitments that don't support your goals. Saying no becomes easier when your options are limited, because you're not battling between many priorities. You know exactly what deserves your attention and what doesn't. This sharpens your ability to stay disciplined and consistent, which is essential for building long-term habits that support growth. Limiting options also reduces the emotional friction that often accompanies decision-making. Choices come with pressure, and pressure creates stress. When you're constantly faced with choices, even minor ones, your mind stays tense. But when your choices are simple and few, you move with more calmness and confidence. You start trusting yourself because you're no longer stuck in analysis. This calm focus strengthens your resilience and allows you to move through challenges without losing direction. Another important aspect of limiting options is learning to choose simplicity over complexity. Complex paths may seem more impressive, but they often lead to hesitation because they require more decisions along the way. Simplicity makes progress feel attainable. It reduces overwhelm and helps you build a steady rhythm. When your process is simple, you repeat it consistently. Consistency creates mastery, and mastery builds self-respect. You begin to see yourself as someone who follows through, because you made the process easier to follow. Limiting options also encourages you to act sooner. When you're not sifting through multiple ideas or methods, you begin faster. The speed of your start often determines the quality of your results. Waiting creates resistance, but immediate action removes resistance before it grows. A limited set of options pushes you into movement, and movement creates progress long before motivation even appears. The strength of limiting options lies in its ability to clear mental space. When your mind isn't clogged with possibilities, it becomes sharper, calmer, and more decisive. This clarity transforms hesitation into action. You stop drifting and start directing your energy intentionally. By reducing choices, you give yourself the freedom to act without delay, and that daily action becomes the foundation for meaningful growth. Number 8. Attach goals to clear consequences. Attaching goals to clear consequences gives your actions a level of seriousness that motivation alone can never create. A goal without consequences feels optional. You know you should pursue it, but nothing happens if you don't. That lack of urgency allows comfort to take over, and comfort pushes discipline aside without warning. When you attach a consequence to a goal, you turn it into a commitment. You give it weight. You create a sense of responsibility that makes hesitation uncomfortable and inaction costly. This shift strengthens your focus because your mind understands that failing to act brings results you don't want to face. Most people set goals with the hope that they'll stay motivated enough to pursue them. But hope doesn't create consistency. What creates consistency is pressure, not the kind that overwhelms you, but the kind that reminds you that your decisions matter. When there's something at stake, your behavior changes. You stop treating your goals as distant ideas and begin treating them as obligations. This sense of obligation pushes you beyond excuses. Instead of waiting for the right moment, you begin at the moment you said you would, because avoiding the consequence matters more than avoiding discomfort. Consequences don't need to be harsh or extreme. They simply need to be meaningful enough to influence your behavior. A strong consequence creates a link between action and results. Your brain responds to this link instantly because it understands cause. When you know what you'll lose by failing to act, the decision becomes clearer. You're not stuck negotiating with yourself. You act because you want to avoid the outcome tied to inaction. This approach removes emotional uncertainty and replaces it with direct clarity. Many people fail to take action because they treat their goals as suggestions. Without consequences, goals become soft commitments that can be postponed endlessly. Attaching a consequence removes the comfort of postponement. If you skip your daily work, you feel an immediate impact rather than a distant regret. This impact creates accountability, and accountability strengthens discipline. When you hold yourself accountable through consequences, you build the ability to follow through even when motivation is low. A powerful consequence also helps you overcome procrastination. Procrastination thrives in environments where there is no urgency. Without urgency, the mind feels safe delaying tasks. But when a consequence is attached, procrastination loses its appeal. You no longer see delay as harmless. You recognize it as a direct step toward an unwanted outcome. This recognition pushes you to act even when your energy is low or your focus is scattered. It becomes easier to start because the alternative now feels worse than the challenge of beginning. Attaching consequences to goals also helps you set priorities. When you know what you stand to lose by avoiding certain tasks, you stop giving equal attention to everything. You start identifying the tasks with the highest importance because their consequences carry more weight. This sharpens your decision-making. You stop wasting time on unimportant work, and you protect your attention from distractions that don't contribute to your progress. This selective focus improves your productivity because your energy goes into actions that truly matter. Consequences also strengthen your relationship with discipline. Discipline is not about punishing yourself. It's about creating conditions that support your long-term goals. A well-designed consequence reminds you that discipline is a form of self-respect. When you attach consequences to your choices, you're acknowledging that your actions shape your future. This awareness encourages you to take your commitments seriously. It creates a mindset where short-term comfort loses its grip because the long-term cost becomes more obvious. Another benefit of consequences is that they help you remain consistent even when your environment becomes challenging. When life becomes stressful or unpredictable, it's easy to drift away from your goals. But a clear consequence anchors you. It reminds you that your commitments don't disappear just because conditions become difficult. This grounding effect keeps you aligned with your goals during moments when you would normally break your routine. A consequence pulls you back to action because it sets boundaries that you're unwilling to cross. Consequences also build emotional strength. When you hold yourself to a standard and accept the outcomes of your behavior, you grow more resilient. You learn to take responsibility for your choices instead of blaming circumstances. This sense of ownership empowers you. You stop feeling like your results are random or uncontrollable. Instead, you see them as a direct result of your consistency, your discipline, and your willingness to follow through even when it's uncomfortable. This inner stability carries into every part of your life. To make consequences effective, they must be both realistic and uncomfortable. A consequence that is too gentle won't motivate you. A consequence that is too harsh will feel impossible to follow. The goal is to create a consequence that you genuinely want to avoid but are fully capable of enforcing. For example, giving up a daily comfort, paying a financial penalty, reducing leisure time, or sharing your progress with someone who will hold you accountable. These consequences aren't punishments. They're reminders that your behavior has meaning. Another key factor is consistency. A consequence only works if you apply it every time you break your commitment. If you ignore it occasionally, your mind learns that it isn't serious, but when you enforce it every time, you create a clear connection between inaction and results. This teaches your mind to think ahead. Before delaying a task, you automatically consider the consequence. This mental pause is often enough to pull you into action. You develop a habit of anticipating outcomes before making decisions, which reduces impulsiveness and increases intentional behavior. Consequences also work well when they're paired with rewards. A reward pulls you toward action, while a consequence pushes you away from inaction. Together, they create a balanced system that encourages consistency. When you complete your tasks, you gain something positive. When you skip them, you face something uncomfortable. This simple structure keeps you steady, because both sides influence your choices. You're motivated to act, not only by desire but also by responsibility. When you attach goals to clear consequences, you create a system that supports daily progress. Instead of relying on willpower, you rely on structure. Instead of waiting for inspiration, you depend on accountability. This combination makes your goals stronger because they're supported by boundaries that protect your commitment. You take action not because you feel inspired, but because your standard demands. This shift in mindset creates a level of discipline that carries you through doubt, fatigue, and uncertainty. Clear consequences turn your goals into non-negotiable commitments. They eliminate the softness that leads to delay and replace it with determination. You stop drifting and start directing your behavior with intention. Every action gains meaning because it's tied to an outcome you care about. This connection strengthens discipline, sharpens focus, and transforms your daily behavior into a steady path toward growth. When your goals have consequences, your actions become consistent, and consistent action builds the life you're trying to create. Number 9. Visualize results before each task. Visualizing results before starting a task is a method that transforms abstract goals into tangible experiences your mind can engage with. Most people begin work with a vague idea of what success looks like, if they think about it at all. That uncertainty leaves them drifting, unsure of why they're acting, and lacking emotional connection to the outcome. Visualization bridges that gap. By picturing the end result clearly, you create a mental image of what completion feels like, what it looks like, and even what it sounds or feels like. This mental rehearsal primes your mind for action, makes the process more compelling, and reduces hesitation before you begin. The act of visualization works because the brain doesn't fully distinguish between imagining an experience and actually living it. When you vividly picture finishing a task, whether it's completing a report, delivering a presentation, or finishing a workout, your mind experiences the achievement as if it has already occurred. This triggers the same motivational and emotional responses that would arise from real success. Your mind becomes invested in the outcome before any physical action has taken place. That investment creates an internal drive, which makes the first step feel more urgent and necessary. Before you begin a task, visualization also helps clarify priorities. When you imagine the result, you see what aspects of the task matter most. This prevents wasted effort on unnecessary details and focuses your energy on what will create the most impact. Instead of starting blindly or guessing, your actions are aligned with the image in your mind. Every choice, every movement, and every decision becomes guided by the end goal. This clarity reduces hesitation because your path is illuminated before you even begin. Visualization strengthens confidence. Many people delay starting a task because they doubt their ability to complete it successfully. When you picture yourself finishing the task with competence and satisfaction, you train your mind to believe in your capability. The imagined success builds an emotional expectation that you can carry into reality. You're no longer waiting for motivation to arrive because you have already mentally rehearsed when. That rehearsal makes it easier to act decisively and consistently, even when external circumstances feel challenging. Visualization also engages your senses, making the result more vivid and emotionally compelling. The more detailed your mental picture, the more your mind treats it as real. You can imagine the sounds, the textures, the interactions, and even the physical sensations associated with completing the task. Feeling the relief of completion, the satisfaction of progress, or the excitement of achieving a goal makes the process emotionally anchored. This emotional connection energizes you to move through the work rather than procrastinate, because your mind craves the positive experience you've already imagined. A practical way to use visualization is to spend a few minutes before starting a task focusing solely on the outcome. Close your eyes, imagine every detail, and immerse yourself in the feeling of completion. Consider how your environment will change, how others will respond, and how you will feel. The more precise and realistic the visualization, the stronger its effect on your focus and energy. By doing this, you prime your mind to act intentionally instead of reactively. You create a mental map that guides every subsequent step. Visualization also reduces mental friction caused by uncertainty. Often hesitation emerges not because a task is difficult, but because the mind cannot foresee the result. When the path is unclear, action feels risky. By imagining the desired outcome in advance, you eliminate much of that uncertainty. You have a mental model to follow. You can anticipate challenges and adjust your actions mentally before engaging physically. This preparation builds resilience and reduces the fear of failure, making it easier to take immediate and confident action. In addition, visualization helps maintain long-term motivation. Tasks that are repetitive, challenging, or prolonged can feel tedious. Regularly picturing the benefits, rewards, or transformation associated with completing them makes the effort meaningful. You connect daily action to the larger vision of success. This connection strengthens endurance because you're constantly reminded of why the effort matters. When your mind consistently experiences the satisfaction of achieving, persistence becomes easier and more automatic. Visualization also enhances problem-solving and creativity. When you see the end result clearly, your mind subconsciously works backward to figure out the steps necessary to achieve it. This backward planning often reveals solutions you might not notice while tackling a task without a clear mental picture. You anticipate obstacles, identify shortcuts, and recognize priorities before action begins. Visualization doesn't just prepare you emotionally, it primes your cognitive abilities to work efficiently toward the result. Another advantage is that visualization helps reinforce consistency. By mentally rehearsing the result every day, you train your mind to stay aligned with your intentions. Even when external distractions arise or motivation wanes, the internalized image of success pulls you forward. The mind learns to expect a pattern of completion and satisfaction, creating a habit loop where seeing the result triggers action. Over time, this practice makes consistent behavior feel natural because the end result is already emotionally real. Visualization also strengthens accountability to yourself. When you imagine the outcome clearly, it becomes harder to rationalize inaction. Skipping a task creates a mental tension because you have already experienced the satisfaction of completing it. That tension motivates you to take the necessary steps to match the image in your mind with reality. Your brain prefers to align your actions with the internal vision you've created, so visualization becomes a self-enforcing mechanism for discipline and follow-through. Moreover, visualization increases focus on meaningful outcomes. Many people expend energy on tasks without connecting them to real results. By imagining the end result, you highlight what truly matters. You stop getting lost in minor details or distractions because your attention is anchored to the ultimate objective. This clarity allows you to invest your energy where it produces the highest impact, making every step more purposeful and every action more efficient. Visualization also supports emotional regulation during difficult tasks. When a task feels tedious, overwhelming, or stressful, recalling the imagined result reminds you why the effort is worthwhile. You shift your focus from discomfort to benefit. This emotional reframing reduces resistance and increases patience. You experience a sense of control over your experience because your mind has a template for what success feels like, giving you a mental edge over fatigue, doubt, or frustration. Finally, visualization transforms action from an abstract expectation into a lived experience. By repeatedly imagining results before beginning, you prime your brain to act decisively, focus clearly, and persist patiently. Your mind and body align with the end goal, removing hesitation and creating momentum. This technique bridges the gap between intention and execution, turning each step into an informed, confident, and purposeful act. Over time, the habit of visualizing outcomes ensures that you not only start tasks consistently, but complete them with clarity, energy, and deliberate focus. Number 10. Start tasks before motivation arrives. Waiting for motivation before starting a task is one of the biggest traps that prevents people from achieving their goals. Motivation is unpredictable. It comes and goes, often at times when you can least use it. Relying on it means that you're giving your results to chance. Action, however, is controllable. When you start tasks before motivation appears, you take responsibility for your progress instead of hoping that inspiration will arrive. This approach flips the usual cycle of waiting into a cycle of doing, and the doing itself often generates the motivation you were waiting for in the first place. Most people believe that motivation should come first. They wait until they feel energized, excited, or inspired before acting. This mindset is a slow killer of productivity because feelings are unreliable. They fluctuate depending on sleep, mood, distractions, or countless minor influences. Starting without motivation means relying on structure, discipline, and habit instead of ephemeral emotions. By decoupling action from feeling, you gain consistent control over your day. You create a rhythm where work is non-negotiable regardless of how motivated you feel, and results no longer depend on whims. The principle is simple. Begin the task even if you don't feel like it. Break through the initial resistance by taking one small step. Often the hardest part of any task is simply beginning. Once you take that first step, momentum starts to build. The physical act of doing triggers psychological engagement. Your brain begins to recognize progress, and even small movement generates a sense of accomplishment that fuels further action. Motivation doesn't need to exist at the start because it often emerges from the act itself. Starting before motivation also strengthens mental resilience. Life frequently throws obstacles that make tasks feel unappealing or overwhelming. Waiting for motivation in these moments ensures that you delay indefinitely. Taking action first trains your mind to function even under less than ideal conditions. You build the ability to act despite fatigue, doubt, or distraction. This skill is not only valuable for daily productivity but also essential for long-term growth, because many meaningful achievements are won through consistent effort rather than perfect timing. One effective way to start before motivation is to define a very small entry point. Instead of committing to completing the entire task immediately, commit to the first step. For example, instead of writing a full report, write one sentence. Instead of exercising for an hour, put on your workout shoes and stretch for 5 minutes. These small initial actions are easier to execute even without motivation. Once you begin, your brain naturally ramps up involvement, and completing the full task becomes less intimidating. The action creates the energy that was missing at the outset. This approach also eliminates the trap of overthinking. People often wait for motivation because they overanalyze the task, anticipating difficulty, distractions, or failure. By starting without waiting for a perfect mental state, you bypass the internal debate. You stop imagining obstacles and begin encountering them directly. Action simplifies complexity because instead of theorizing endlessly, you interact with reality. This reduces mental clutter and increases confidence, as you learn that progress comes from doing, not planning. Another benefit is that it builds trust in your own discipline. Motivation is inconsistent, but your ability to act can be strengthened and relied upon. Each time you start a task without feeling motivated, you reinforce the idea that you can depend on yourself. You develop a sense of self-efficacy that is independent of mood or external conditions. Over time, this belief becomes a self-sustaining engine. You act, succeed, and reinforce the habit of action without waiting for emotional readiness. Starting before motivation also teaches patience and persistence. Many tasks require sustained effort, and waiting for motivation often leads to uneven work patterns. By acting first, you create a consistent rhythm, which is more important than bursts of inspired work. Momentum builds gradually, and progress accumulates reliably. You stop relying on spikes of energy and instead trust the process of action itself. Consistency becomes the source of results, and motivation simply follows, often appearing naturally as you see tangible progress. This strategy is particularly effective for long-term goals. Large projects or difficult habits cannot rely on daily bursts of enthusiasm. Success is achieved through steady execution, which often occurs before you feel ready. Starting without motivation keeps the process moving forward and prevents stagnation. It turns routine action into an unstoppable force because the initiation of work is no longer contingent on internal states. Your results grow from your decisions, not your emotions. Breaking the cycle of waiting also reduces procrastination. The longer you wait, the more excuses accumulate. Fear, doubt, and distraction feed on delay. By starting immediately, you cut off the time your mind has to rationalize avoidance. You act before resistance has a chance to take hold. This approach rewires your behavior over time. Your default response becomes to begin, not to delay. Action becomes automatic because your brain learns that starting is the only way forward, regardless of emotional readiness. Another advantage is the psychological momentum created by early action. Beginning even a small part of a task sends a message to your subconscious. You are capable and in control. This sense of agency increases energy and focus. The first step activates both cognitive and emotional engagement, making subsequent steps feel natural rather than forced. Motivation, when it arrives, is not the spark that ignites your work. It is a byproduct of the motion you have already initiated. Action begets motivation, reversing the common misconception that motivation must precede effort. Starting before motivation also improves efficiency. When you act without waiting for the perfect mindset, you spend less time debating and more time producing. This habit trains you to approach tasks directly, reducing wasted energy on indecision. You focus on progress instead of emotional preparation, which accelerates your results. Over time, this creates a feedback loop. Your consistent action builds momentum, results reinforce confidence, and confidence fuels further action. Waiting for motivation becomes unnecessary because the process itself provides the drive needed to continue. The principle extends beyond work to habits, health, and personal development. Exercise, studying, creative practice, or difficult conversations all benefit from initiating action first. Waiting for motivation in these areas often means that weeks or months pass without meaningful progress. Beginning immediately removes that barrier and converts intention into reality. You create a pattern where progress is habitual, independent of emotional fluctuations, and steadily compounds over time. Finally, starting before motivation cultivates discipline and control. It shifts the responsibility for results from unpredictable feelings to deliberate choice. You learn that action is always available, regardless of mood, energy, or external circumstances. By consistently starting tasks before motivation arrives, you build a life where consistency replaces chance, effort replaces hope, and results are the natural outcome of deliberate behavior. Action becomes the default, and motivation simply follows as a consequence of the work you have already begun.